Hey guys, it's Karina here with another video, and today I have a guest special on my channel. This is Jonah, my friend from university. So we're doing a screen recorded FaceTime video today. So I apologize if there's any technicalities or delays in this video. But yeah, we're just gonna do kind of an interview style video. So I'm gonna kind of interview Jonah. So, Jonah, what is your program at university?
Hey, yeah. First of all, thank you for having me. It's great to be able to talk to you here. My program at university, I'm in the Bachelor of Journalism at Carleton.
Nice. And what makes you passionate about journalism?
I mean, a lot of different things. Certainly, I had a lot of exposure to it growing up because both my parents have been involved in journalism in their separate ways. My mother's edited certain magazines, and my dad was a bit more into kind of the audio radio side of it. He worked at various radio stations, and right now he produces a podcast. So that was part of it. But I think I kind of like to live by the philosophy that everything is more interesting than it appears, and everyone and everything has a story behind it, no matter how small that story is going to be. And I like that aspect of journalism where you just sort of go a little bit deeper and learn slightly more interesting things about the world. And like I don't think I'm going to be any kind of a Pulitzer Prize winner who's going overseas to war zones and changing the world with my work. I leave that to more capable people, but I like the idea of talking to people, of discovering new things in new places, and just being able to share stories with the world and share real world stories, because another philosophy I live by is that so often the stories happening in the real world around us are much more interesting than anything you can find in a book or a movie.
For sure, absolutely. I love that answer. I really like that idea of that everything has a story. I think that's so true. And I would love to go into journalism too. I feel like it would be really cool just to like hear people's stories and like be a part of that and like experience that. And also don't limit yourself though. I feel like you might be changing the world someday, like, across the world journaling about a war zone or something. I feel like it could happen.
Well, you know what? I think I also believe that anyone can change the world, but not everyone has to change everything about the world. And I think if you can just make a little bit of a difference, something subtle, then that can be your contribution. And I think that if everybody did just a little bit more, rather than maybe a few people trying to do everything, the world would be a lot better and a lot more interesting of a place.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. So both Jonah and I are both Christians, and so I just wanted to ask Jonah what his journey in faith has been.
Yeah, it's been a bit of an interesting one for me because I've always grown up in the United Church of Canada. More or less, I've attended two churches in my life. One of them was only until I was like 5 or something, so I don't really remember it. So I've definitely always felt like I was around a very, very strong church community and a very, very strong Christian community. And I'm not sure I ever really doubted my faith particularly. I think there were times when I wondered if maybe there was another path, another religion, another kind of spirituality that was more suited to me. I read up on a whole bunch of different religions. Just the study of religion is something that's always fascinated me anyway. But I think I've always had doubts and criticisms about Christianity, but I think that's an important aspect of being Christian in the modern world is understanding those faults and understanding where you can learn. And I think that just, like I say, always being part of a community that was very, very open and very tolerant. Like I think I've mentioned to you before that my church voted to become an affirming congregation, which means basically adding to the mission statement that the congregation supports LGBTQ plus transgender people as well, and that vote passed by a score of like 196 to 4 or something ridiculous. We've
Hmm.
sponsored a couple of refugee families. So I think that, I talk to people who have very, very bitter views of Christianity for one reason or another. And I obviously, like, I can't deny those people that. Like, I think that's true. And as I said, I'm very critical of aspects of Christianity, especially, the some of this recent news and these revelations about residential schools has that I think that anybody who's a Christian should be reevaluating their life after that. But for me, I guess just because I'd always grown up around that positivity and that supportiveness for me, for other people, I've always had a very positive view of it. So I think in terms of a journey, I think it's very much been an upward journey, and I think that the church and Christianity have overall had a very positive impact on my life.
That's awesome. I really like your story. I think it's really cool where you've come from and how you've questioned your faith and how you've just been like so open along the journey. Yeah, I think that's really cool. My journey has been a bit different, as you know. I definitely started off more conservative and then had my questioning period, and now I feel like I'm in a lot more of an open space. But it's really cool that that's kind of how it started for you. It's always been kind of an open book. So I really admire that. Yeah. So, this year, you've told me about this course that you took. It was an interpretation of religion course. So I was just curious, what you would like to share and what you learned, from that course.
Yeah, well, I mentioned a little bit earlier just that I've always been fascinated with the study of religion, kind of as an academic discipline,
Mm-hmm.
and part of that's just because I've always been very interested in history and also in cultural geography, and uh, really, religion is probably the single biggest cultural influence on any given society in the world. If you look at the different regions of the world right now, whether it's the Middle East or Europe or here in North America or East and Southeast Asia, really, religion has been the biggest dominant cultural force in a lot of places. And I think that by understanding and interpreting religion, you can start to understand culture a little bit better. So that was a really interesting thing for me. And of course, there's also a bit of a psychological aspect to it as well. And one of the things I find probably the most interesting when studying religions is the idea of being able to sort of connect threads between different beliefs and different creation stories or visions of the apocalypse or of a heaven kind of thing. For instance, I think this is bad. I'm going to forget the names now. But, I remember doing a report about the Pueblo First Nation back in high school, and their creation myth involved um, coming out of the ground, sort of
Mm.
that humans came from the ground. And you compare, like, there were a couple of other First Nations across North America who had that same sort of story. But yeah, like I say, just the stories and the myths of the religions themselves tell you so much about a culture when you start to interpret them. I did this report towards the end of that class that was all about visions of the apocalypse and visions of death, and I talked a little bit at one point about how in old ancient Norse mythology, their version of the apocalypse involved snow and ice and everything becoming barren and I guess untillable, and nothing would grow and no food would grow because of all the ice and snow, because that was what they knew. Of course, people living in northern Scandinavia, a climate like kind of like what we know here in Canada, aren't going to be talking about fire and sandstorms and stuff like that. But then, if you look at, I think it was ancient Sumeria and ancient Mesopotamia, when they talked about their afterlife, the thing that sticks out, the equivalent of like a hell in Christianity, is that it was dry. Everything was dry, and you can interpret from that okay, well, these are people who live in a very arid kind of
Mhm.
area of the world, and they rely so much on the water from rivers to sustain their lives. So I just think it's a really, really fascinating way of connecting people pretty much in the most base psychological form, and
Mhm.
across the thing that is pretty much unanimous to all of humanity. Like, almost every society that's ever existed has had a religion, and it's a really cool it's a really cool way of tying people to their environment, and also, I guess, tying people to each other, sort of.
For sure. Yeah, I really liked everything you had to say. I thought that was really cool. I really liked the point you made about connecting all the threads with different religions. I think that's one of my most favorite things about religion is just like seeing how every religion has things in common and then kind of like making my own religion in some ways and just taking like all the things that kind of like align with what I believe in and what resonates with me. I think that is my favorite part of looking at different religions to see the commonalities. And it is just so interesting that like we have all these different religions, but there's so much in common within all of them. So I find that super fascinating. So this is a very open-ended question, but how would you say in short how religion shapes society?
Hmm. I mean, I think religion is society in a lot of ways. Uh, like I kind of alluded to there earlier, the idea that pretty much like our society, I think, for better or absolutely for worse as well, would not be what it is without Christianity.
Right.
And when you look at the history of the past 4, 5, 2,100 years, just about everything has had uh, I can draw its lineage back to religion in some way. Most wars, most societies, most dynasties. But that's I'm waxing historical a little bit there because that's history is big in religion. I'm hardly the first person to think that. But in a more modern context, that's uh, that's an interesting thing because I think our perception of morality and being good in the past 100 years or so has shifted much more from being about following religious scripture and being godly as it is to just sort of being generally a good person and not necessarily doing it in the name of any religious institution per se. But the role of religion in a modern society, I think, I think as a constant is maybe how I would say it. Is that when you look at our society, there's not a whole lot that stays the exact same about it. Uh, but I think religion does, and I think it's, again, for better or for worse, a way of tying people back to their roots, and to their culture and to their family traditions, maybe. Yeah, and I think that no matter what, people are always going to have that desire to connect with a bit of a higher power. Everyone wants to understand something higher than themselves, and that's never going to go away. It might take on different forms, but nobody's going to be able to change that.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Yeah, I really like what you said about like religion is society because I mean that's such a good point. I mean, we kind of create religion in some ways and yeah, our history forms religion. So it kind of religion is kind of dictated by society and the people within society. Which I think is a really good point. So this is again a very vague, open-ended question, but what fascinates you about religion?
Mm. Well, I think earlier I mentioned that just about everybody has that sort of innate desire to want to connect with something a little bit higher than themselves, and I think I'm absolutely no different from that. I do. I think what fascinates me about religion is that it is something that cannot be made concrete, and it's something that cannot have one single tangible form. Um, don't get me wrong. I think science is great. I love that we're living in an era with near constant scientific discoveries, and yeah, and obviously a lot of work being done about that's keeping people alive longer. I'll never be able to understand it personally. I'm glad other people are doing it, but science and understanding the world in a scientific sense are those are definite things. Everything on earth has a scientific explanation. For every action there's a reaction, but
Mhm.
religion isn't that way. I've always been much more of a kind of airy fairy, metaphysical, what's our place in the cosmos type person. And I
Right.
like that religion gives us a way to continue having those conversations about, what does it mean to be good? What does it mean to have lived a full life?
Right.
Questions like that there is just literally no scientific answer for. And I think that through connection to God or a higher power, you're kind of bringing yourself closer to being able to answer those questions. And everybody's going to have a different answer for them, which I think is really fantastic.
Hmm. Yeah, I find it really interesting that like that was your answer. I really like that answer, but it's funny that you what fascinates you or what you really like about it is that it's not concrete, which is funny to me because like when I was more conservative, what I loved about it was that in my mind it was concrete. I'm like, it's black and white. This is the way, this is the rules,
Mhm.
this is the law. Like this is my life. And I liked the structure it gave me. Whereas now like kind of deconstructing and progressing in my faith, I've kind of come to different terms, and I would say the same thing. Like what I now love about it is how open-ended it is. But it's just funny how everyone has kind of a different view, and some people do like it for its structure, and some people do like it for its lack of structure, right? So
And I think that's really important to remember for some of those more conservative denominations. When I
mhm,
look at um, especially well here in Canada and in the United States as well, those very conservative evangelical every word of the Bible kind of interpretations, where it may be a much more black and white view of it. Um, sure, you can believe that, but it's not. No matter how hard you try to preach that, because that same Bible that you are using to persecute people and discriminate against people, while somebody on the other side of the country is using it to um, preach openness and inclusivity and progressivism, and you cannot stop that from happening. You cannot stop all those different interpretations from being out there.
exactly. Yeah. All right, moving on. Um, what would you like to know more about religion? Once again, vague question.
Hmm. Would I like to know more about religion? Well, earlier I mentioned those kind of connecting threads of different beliefs. I do enjoy the study of religion, as I mentioned, but unfortunately at this point in my life, I haven't really known that many people, a few here and there, but of different faiths and of different beliefs. And I would love to be able to make a friend of the Muslim faith, or a friend of the Buddhist faith, or Hindu or whatever, and just be able to sit down with people and basically talk about, okay, so how was this for you growing up? How did you see so and so? What were the rules in your house about religion? Did your parents not like you taking the name of God, or Yahweh or Allah in vain? And I just think that there's so much more that can be understood about how we are the same. And I know that that's going to sound just like a really again a really airy fairy kind of answer, like, oh, we're all the same, everybody's equal. I get that not everybody's going to get along, um, but I do think it's important to recognize those really common threads and just how they might present themselves differently in different faiths.
Yeah, for sure. I really like that answer. And I feel like, too, with journalism, like you'll hopefully definitely have the opportunity to interview people from different faiths and kind of, yeah, see what the commonalities are and see what their experiences were and see how their experience might have been different too, right? So yeah, I feel like
Mm-hmm.
that's exciting. Um, so the last thing I wanted to talk about is I know you have some like spiritual philosophies. Specifically, one time you mentioned this idea of a higher self. So yeah, if you just wanted to dive into maybe one or two, yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you remembered that because that's kind of a core belief of mine is that idea that um, really God is kind of in all of us, um, and maybe not necessarily in the sense that they would have talked to you about in Sunday school, but that idea that a big part of religion is about personal fulfillment and a journey towards self improvement and self betterment and I think a large part of that is being able to reckon with yourself and understand yourself and understand how to be better. And I think that sort of achieving that relationship with a higher power in many ways mirrors being able to achieve a better relationship with yourself and comfort with yourself. And I think originally this idea kind of came out of the fact that I talk to myself a lot like all the time when I'm basically anytime I'm not doing something else. And I started to think about that. And after a while I'm like, well, who am I talking to? Like what am I accomplishing here? And I thought about it and I thought about it and I thought, well maybe this is kind of my way of communicating with God or communicating with a higher power is um not not through communion or ritual or anything like that. That's a really important thing to some people, and I absolutely respect that. But I think for me, communion is just sort of casually having conversations with with myself or as I see it with God. And um, I think that when we seek forgiveness from God, that that I know that's a very big idea, certainly in Christianity, as I'm familiar with, is that idea of seeking atonement and seeking forgiveness. I think that in a lot of those cases, probably what you really want is to atone with yourself and with your own values, and that's where God comes from. And
Yeah,
really, what it comes down to is that God is whatever you want God to be, and that relationship can be whatever you want it to be. But it comes from yourself, and it ends with yourself, and I think that's what's really important.
absolutely. Yeah, I love that answer. And yeah, I totally agree with that. Like, I'm definitely a person who talks to myself a lot. Like, even today I was biking and it's just like, I just find myself talking to myself. It's just, yeah. But I like the idea that that's kind of like your way of communicating with God and your higher self as well. And just that idea that, like, your prayers are a manifestation and that you are praying to a higher version of yourself. I think that's a really great way to look at it. Um, yeah. So thank you so much for coming on my channel. To end off this video, we're going to play a little game of, I like to do this with everyone who comes on my show. Well, not my show, my YouTube channel, whatever you want to call it. So it is a little game of who knows each other better. So we have 3 questions and yeah, essentially I'm going to guess Jonah's answer and he's going to guess mine and we'll see who wins. So our
I'm
first
pretty confident about these, so
yeah, me too. I feel like I've gotten at least 2 of them right, I feel like. Maybe. We'll see. Okay, so the first question is, where is your top place to travel right now? So I'll say what I think you would say first. So I think your answer would be Germany. Am I correct or
very
incorrect?
very close. I'll you're close. What I wrote was the Himalayas.
Oh,
That's always been a top destination. I would love to see Nepal. I'd love to see Bhutan. But if I had been asked to give a second answer, I probably would have said Austria, which is
okay.
basically just Germany anyway. Don't let the
Yeah.
Austrians hear me
Mm-hmm.
say that. But I would give you a solid half point for that if we were keeping score.
Okay, cool, cool.
Uh,
What do you think my answer was?
yeah. Anyway, yeah, for you, I put sort of this might be cheating a little bit, but I said kind of like Kenya and or like sub-Saharan Africa.
Interesting.
I
That's
thought kind of like the savannah would be what you'd be really drawn to.
Yeah, I definitely love to go to Africa and the savannah and all of that. But my top place, like on my list, that's like, yeah, where I want to go is Australia.
Oh,
Hmm.
good answer.
Yeah. Okay, so our next question is favorite holiday. So my guess for Jonah was Christmas.
I wanted to say Easter, and then I wanted to say Canada Day, but I thought, you know what, it's the easy answer. But I gotta be honest, I do love Christmas. And on that, I had the same answer for you as well.
Yeah, it's
I
Christmas.
said Christmas for you. Okay, okay.
Yeah. Okay, so we each got a point for that one. Okay, and
Okay.
then our last question is, are you an introvert, an extrovert, or an ambivert? So my answer for Jonah is I think he's an ambivert, which means both.
I didn't know that was an option until you told me earlier. But as soon as you told me, I said, okay, yeah, yeah, that one. Because I'm so much a person who, like, I love to go out and see people. I love my friends. I love spending time with my family. But then, like, when I'm off, I'm off, and like
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I when I just want to let go and lie under a rock and talk to absolutely no one for 24 hours. So I think, yeah, I didn't know there was a word for it until like 45 minutes ago, but I think you pretty much hit the nail right on the head with that one. And now I'm wondering if maybe I should have said that for you, but I put extrovert for you.
I am an extrovert. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well, it looks like we ended in a tie.
Yeah.
Well, it was still good fun
Deadlock.
though.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, thank you for coming on my channel. It was amazing talking to you, and maybe you'll come sometime again. And yeah, I hope
That'd be
everyone
great.
has a great week. Bye.